Hey everyone, Steve here from Big Head Tech, and we got another laptop review. It seems that I can't hold on to laptops because I keep getting ones that fail. So the IdeaPad's already sent back. That had a sound crashing issue, and to be honest, that was hurting my actual job because I don't like using Macs. So my company said, well, you know, as long as you put a couple of security parameters, you can use your own systems. That's what I did. So I need something more reliable. And then Lenovo is like, oh, I have a Legion 5 for you to test. They didn't actually say that, but they had one at a very attractive price. For $940, $900 plus $40 for a memory upgrade that I did myself, I now have a gaming laptop again. Now, is this the best spec for the dollar? Probably, but for not much more you can do a bit better. But let's back up. I want to address an elephant in the room. So you guys challenged me and I messed up because I automatically assumed that what you guys were saying without my own research was correct. And I mean, nobody's come to say that I was wrong, but it turns out I was. The Asus TUF A15 indeed has thermal problems. There's going to be a link in the description below, hardware unboxed. Particularly, I know the 1660 Ti model seems to have that problem. And he goes over the whole design. He talks about in the bottom, like these vents are mostly blocked, the side vents aren't fully exposed. Like he goes over why it has thermal issues. And that fan was really loud. It got really hot on my lap. The IdeaPad worked pretty well. However, it wasn't CPU throttling. I think it was memory throttling because it was telling you something was throttling, but it wasn't the processor. Because I had to run power save mode to play games, and I was having trouble maintaining above 30 FPS in GTA 5. World of Warcraft actually played pretty well. So I returned that, and I spent about $760 plus tax in shipping. I paid $940 free shipping for this one plus tax, so a little bit more. But here are the specs, and I'll put them right up here for you. We're now back to a 4800H, so we now have simultaneous multi-threading. This came with a single 8 gig kit of DDR4 3200 megahertz. I did upgrade that to 16, $40. A 512 gig NVMe SSD and an it has a GTX 1650. It's not super, but it's GDDR6, so it's like the mobility version. So you'll see some comparisons against the super version. It is not quite as powerful, but it does everything I need. It has that strong processor, and I may even upgrade this to 32 gigs. It has a large enough SSD for now, and I can always expand that if needed. And it has a good enough graphics cards for the games that I play. And the games I play in high detail. GTA 5, World of Warcraft, and some of your other esports games. So I encourage you to take a look at the link in the description below to actually go to Hardware Unboxed's review of the TUF to prove that I was right. That thing ran hot. But we're going to go ahead and take this apart really quick, look at some benchmarks, and hopefully by the very end I can recommend this. So let's take a look at I/O. We have a single USB port on this side. We have another single USB port on this side with a headphone microphone jack combo. And then finally, and this is what I'm really happy about here, is this on the back actually makes it easier to use. You're not putting pressure on these connectors. So we don't have USB Type-C charging. It is one Lenovo standard. An HDMI out, 2 more USB Type-C and Ethernet. Now that's really nice. We'll do some testing here to see what kind of output this USB-C has. As for the layout here, we are looking at a standard layout with a number pad over here. These keys definitely feel very solid, actually more solid than the IdeaPad. Trackpad is honestly fine, no issues there. Single power up here, and then we do have a webcam up top, and it does have a webcam cover, which is always nice to have. Get that back for future meetings. But it weighs, I think, I'll put it in, down here, but I think it's like 4 and some change. I think it's a fair bit under 5 if I remember correctly. So first thing you have to do is grab your Gamer's Nexus toolkit here, and these are all Phillips screws, which are nice. I actually have already lost a screw, shame on me. It seems that all the screws around the sides, basically around here in the middle, are all the same length, and then the front 4 are slightly shorter. That is actually pretty common in the laptop world. We'll go ahead and take one of these here and just have to get through one of the sides. There we go. You can just work your way around. Now, just to give you a tour on why, and I'll kind of skip to the end here. This laptop's thermals are fantastic. They really are. So if you look at here, right over top of the fans, it can pull in air right here and right here. No obstruction. This obviously has some mesh, but it's not obstructed as well, so that's good. The vents on the sides here are fully open, and also on the back, and then also on this side. And when you look at, we'll put this down here, the heat sinks, I mean, there's no obstruction here. You know, these are fully unobstructed. Same thing here, same thing here. And that's where the Asus one really lacks. The other thing is they only share one heat pipe, and that's this middle one right here. And that's the one that comes out here. It actually has, they each have their own dedicated heat pipe, which is also good, whereas the Asus had 2-in-1. GPU on the Asus did not run that warm, but the CPU did. Now, in order to get to the NVMe drive, it is under here. It does require 3 screws. And then the last one is here. Now I like what they did with this, and I'll show you what I mean. So, oh wait, that's my wife's laptop. They did it. Ignore me. So right now we have a Samsung PCIe NVMe SSD. The model is M, so Mary Victor, or Mary Zulu, so MZ, Mary Zulu dash Victor Lima Bravo 512 Bravo is that. So just keep that in mind. You also have access to the Wi-Fi card. The memory, this one was tricky. I wouldn't have thought that it was under here, and it actually is. So if you need to change out the memory here, just be careful on lifting this here. You don't want to break any of the clips. There is some tape here, so just keep that in mind. You'll want to keep that there, but very simple. If you need to undo this, pop it out. Very simple, line up, push it down. The memory stick that comes with it, this is the one that was installed, is an SK Hynix. It is a single chip, 8 gig, 3200 megahertz. And does it say what the CAS latency is? No, it doesn't. I'll have to actually look at it in CPU-Z later. So we'll again get this put back in. There we go. So we'll get this back on. It's literally just held in by some clips. You just want to make sure you line it up with all the clips here before you push it back down. Just like that. Perfect. And then the battery, I always have trouble finding all the good information on the battery here. Oh, here we go. So 3940 milliamps, it's 58.8 watt hour. It says total capacity 60 watt hours. So this is kind of blocked off here. And then you also have, and I'll probably expand this later, you do have an expansion drive here. This is only going to be SATA. You don't have expansion NVMe. You would either have to replace this one right here or then add a SATA. I have lights behind me, that's why it looks all messed up. Just ignore that part. But what you can see here is I have a 1440p display hooked up and a 1080p. And I believe actually I'm unplugged the HDMI here. I think I have oh, let me see which one this one is here. We don't want to duplicate one to extend. Yes, so I have the 1440p connected up to USB Type-C. So it does support that. It will not charge that way, but also use a different kind of charging connector. Here you can hear the speakers. They actually are coming, I believe, right down over in here. Good sound, especially compared to the Lenovo, even though those were top firing. Okay, so let's talk about the two laptops. So here we have two laptops that are essentially $40 or $60 in difference. You're getting the same processor, same amount of memory, same size SSD. Neither one have a great screen by any means. That's one of the big complaints, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Slightly less power-hungry power brick, but you're going from a 1660 Ti down to a 1650. That's not even a 1650 Super. But first things first, let's take a look at Cinebench. And what you'll actually see here is this Legion 5 there's actually a turbo button just like the Asus one does. It scores 200 points higher in R20, about 50 points higher in R15, and single threaded, it was consistently a smidget higher, but we're talking like 0.1%. Single core is really not going to make much of a difference, but the multi-core definitely does make a difference. 200 points, and we'll actually go into that a little bit here. Blender BMW, same exact situation here. We're looking at 4.37 versus 4.13. This is version 2.79. I know version 2.8 runs better, but I don't have tests on that, so I have to keep apples to apples. I'm going to show you guys a couple things here, and I was originally going to actually finish exporting, but let's go ahead and run a multi-core test here. And the reason why this is important, now this is going to score lower, but to actually understand why this performs a fair bit better than the Asus. And that is because I will get roughly a sustained all-core speed of around 3.8 is where it'll settle in at. So what will happen is the power will go to about 64 watts, and then it'll kind of come down to about 45. And at 45 watts, it will settle in right about 3.738, whereas the Asus settled at like 3.435. So we're going to do H.264 1080p high quality. We're going to hit export. I am using GPU acceleration, but this is what I want to show you here. So this will take probably, I guess, 4 minutes or so. But let's take a look at what's actually going on with the CPU. So it's actually bouncing, look at those speeds, 4.1 on all these cores. Now, usually from what I've seen is it's going to clock down on average two of the cores of the 8 down to about 1.8 consistently, but it's going to keep these all the way up. And when you look at power, it's only pushing out 47 watts. It's going to probably spike to close to 90 degrees. Now, mind you, though, I have turbo enabled. So if I just ran regular, it would probably not quite get that high. But honestly, it's going to stay in the 80s during this export time. And it's really cool to see like a laptop with this much raw horsepower. Like this export is going to be done less than 4 minutes. And it's compressing all this data down into 2.5 gigs. So this is a regular video. It's like 15 minutes long. I don't do anything like After Effects, but usually anywhere from 2 to 3 gigs is normal. And why this is so important is whenever I export, I usually have to export 3 or 4 times. I go through and find things I don't like. On my old laptop, the original Ryzen 5 2500U, these would take 45 minutes to an hour. So when I find issues, that's how much more time I add, and it could take hours to get a final product when I could probably do a couple of passes through and get through this last part in about 25, 30 minutes. When we look at games, this is where the Asus really picks up a fair bit because of 1660 Ti. I'm also comparing with a 1650 Super with a different system as well. That's my Ryzen 3000 system I used to have. So we definitely, note that the 1660 Ti is a bit more powerful, no doubt about it. Looking at like Forza, for example, 105 versus 75, 86 versus 60 in F1, Division 2, 81 versus 55, and then 71 versus 49, respectively. But this is kind of the big difference for me. Temperature. After playing GTA 5 for about an hour with some thermal throttling, I was hitting 105 degrees Celsius on the CPU. Now this isn't over ambient, this is just total temp. 71 on the GPU, not a big issue on the GPU. With this Legion 5, 82 degrees on the CPU, 59 on the GPU. It's not very powerful GPU, all things considered. And that's really the big difference for me, is I want to be able to use this laptop, and the fact that it's not like a jet engine and ran 105 degrees Celsius, that's a problem. If it's loud and effective, then you can tweak the fan. But if you have to run the fan at max just to prevent a little bit of thermal throttling, you're running at the limit, that's not good. This thing is whisper quiet. I would actually be okay with increasing the fan speed. That's CPU temp, and that's like max, not sustained, by the way, for either one. But to sustain for the Asus was definitely in the upper 90s. But that's precisely it. Lenovo, in my opinion, made almost the perfect sub-$1,000 laptop. There's 2 issues with it. This screen is not great. It's not very bright. Now for me, it's not a big deal. That doesn't bother me. It's 120 hertz. It's only 250 nit brightness, but that is definitely a deal breaker for some people. It's not a very great color accurate, high quality screen. It's also within $60 when you compare apples to apples of a better, higher performing laptop. But I think everybody can agree that right now the Asus A15, if you take a look in the description below, and I mentioned this earlier in the video, has a lot of issues with it, a lot of quality issues with it, with the way the heatsink's designed, with the way it's exhausting. It just runs really hot, really loud, just not a big fan of that. So this is kind of my take for Lenovo, what I would like to see. I would like to see a native 16 gig model just because you really should. I would also like to see, 1660 Super without too much of a price increase. If this came in around $1,000 with a 1660 Super and 16 gigs of memory, it'd be very competitive. For me, it's very competitive because I do mostly video work and mid-level, entry-level gaming. So the added CPU performance without the added heat is definitely a big win for me. And I'm probably going to upgrade to 32 gigs of memory. So for me, this is kind of the perfect mobile workstation. It doesn't get too hot, and you can put on your lap without it overheating. You have these I/O in the rear, so you don't have to worry about bending anything when it's on your lap. It doesn't get super loud. It can do mid-level game. It can play any game. Now the question is, it could be medium settings or high settings depending on the age. GTA 5, pretty much max settings. World of Warcraft, max settings. Most of your mid-level games, Forza, max settings, no problem. F1, max settings, no problem. Other games like Hitman, which I didn't do, or Ghost Recon Wildlands, probably medium-high would be good to get that above 60 FPS. So that's pretty much kind of my conclusion. I would say if you can find the Legion 5 for $900, upgrade the memory, I think it's a good buy if your primary focus is content and not gaming. If your primary focus is gaming, not content, there are some other laptops I'd be a little bit more expensive, but definitely do your research. I definitely recommend Ryzen in that regard. By the way, before I finish this out, 2 more laptop reviews coming. One, the Lenovo Flex 5 14-inch. My wife just bought it for her. She loves it. And I'm getting a laptop from MSI. My dad is falling in love with it. It's $660 from Best Buy. It has the Ryzen 5 4600H, same GPU. I think it's only 256 gig SSD with 8 gigs RAM. We're going to upgrade to at least 16, if not 32. I will do a full review on that in probably a few weeks after I'm done moving. My dad's really excited to get that laptop. He doesn't use it, but he's a guy like me, and he loves, the power for the value. So that's pretty much it. If you want to buy anything listed in this video, I'll try to find you links to Amazon. If you do buy anything from Amazon, I do get a percentage from Amazon as like an advertising fee. Just full disclosure, I do get paid on that, so that does help me out a lot. Like the video if you liked it, dislike if you dislike it, leave a comment, get subscribed. And as always, this is Steve from Big Head Tech. I hope to continue to produce videos periodically over the next couple months until I do a full return, but I'll see you all later on down the road.